So sorry, I almost got distracted. Jared, are you new?
Hey, no, I've been here a few times.
All right, I apologize that I don't recognize the name.
Oh, no worries.
All right. When you have your test set yet?
Yeah, it's set for December 7th or so.
All right, and how are you coming along with that?
Eh, all right. Most of my career experience is in IR, incident response, endpoint security, that domain.
Right.
And I learn through practical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, this is a test that has no practical to it. It's just read and remember.
I would like to disagree with that.
Okay.
I have over 30 years in IT, 25 in just networking, and 20 of those dealing directly with the CEO, the board, the stakeholders. I also have a PM certificate and a paralegal certification, and I've been studying this for 10 years. And when you say practicality, when you get to the test, hopefully, hopefully you have the easy test like I got. But a lot of it is just general sense, and it's just if you've been practicing it for a while, um, it should be second nature. But if you're trying to force it, that, does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And I think the thing is, I might be trying to force it. I might, yeah, I might be trying to take knowledge, or I don't know. I think I'm just staring at the book and hoping that something clicks or connects. And I've, yeah, I'm just not sure it's clicking quite yet.
And this year alone, I spent well over 500 hours preparing for the exam. And then once I sat for it, I'm like, man, I should have taken this exam. I should have taken this exam like 10 years ago if it would have been this easy. Um, so, um, and with you being in incident response, that's usually an area. Um, a lot of them go over with BIA, incident response, disaster recovery, and business continuity, which is an area that I enjoy. Um, but how are you with networks? Networks is usually because it's so diverse that it becomes an area that if you're not in that vicinity, it's a lot of information to take in.
I'd like to think I'm pretty decent. I'm never going to say I'm the subject matter expert or the end all be all or anything, but a lot of my I joined the army, and a lot of my beginning training in the army was all about networks. I'm I feel like if I had to grade myself, I think I could probably take the CCNA and pass.
Okay.
That's about as far as I'd be willing to go.
Well, and that's good because you know about RIP protocol, you know about subnetting, you know about gateways, you know about subnet mask, you know about IPs. And yeah, those are usually areas that a lot of people, I think, in my opinion, get confused if they're not in networking. So, and Josh is just sitting there shaking his head, not saying anything.
I agree with you. I missed the first part of this, but no, you're spitting truth, Cliff. Keep at it, man.
Well, no, I'm happy that I've passed it, and I want others to pass it. So, and it's like that's why I keep coming back. If there's anything that I can show for insight or a different way to look at something that somebody else might, oh, that makes sense. Yeah. So,
well, you're exactly right, Cliff. I mean, one of the first things I got told when I got into security was attacks happen over a network. Very rare exceptions to that. So if you don't understand networking or don't have a foundation on that, then any type of cybersecurity gets pretty difficult.
and a lot of people sit here and think, well, why do these hackers have so much time? Well, it's not like that. They set up an automated ping or script or anything. They start with the script kiddies that sit here and they go out and find things, and then they drill down, and it's like those things are running while they're asleep. They're not sitting here 8 hours a day. But a lot of people don't understand that.
Preach it, man. Preach credential compromise, dark web stuff, all that in there too.
And see, that's one area, the Tor and the darknet is one area that I haven't gone into yet. And I want to learn more about it, but you know what? It's not a priority right this moment. So,
nice.
Well, hey, Cheryl, how you doing?
On the call, Sandra, Paul, and Cheryl. It's great to see all three of you. I'm so glad you're here.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Sandra. Thank you for sending me a practice question this week. That just made my day. I really appreciate that.
I sent one. You know, if there is a way we can send them in bulk. But I was like, oh, I'll send some later, and then I just forgot. But yeah.
You just reach out to me if you want to send them in bulk. No, I really appreciated that. Calvin, great to see you here again. I know we got a chance to chat a little bit last week, but glad to have you here.
Oh, yeah. Likewise.
Excellent.
Yeah, I got a quick question for Cliff real quick before we start.
Yeah.
Hey, Cliff, are you finding it easier as like finding jobs since you got your CISSP or getting callbacks, or what's been your experience so far?
I need to probably, all right, I haven't worked since COVID in 2020. So yeah, having a 4-year gap doesn't look good. However, somebody over on the school CISSP Plus gave me a highlight into their resume that it's like, you know what? Yeah, I could probably do that, which makes it sound better.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've had and I just started like really searching, like today's what, the 17th, so figure 10 days ago.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, and yeah, I've had one heard back, and they want to take it to the next level. It's a contracting job. So they have the pay and the hours at a cap, along with software, which I'm sitting there going, well, if you guys already know what software you want, why do you need me? Well, and that's between you, me, and everybody in the class right now. But it's done some research. So if they're capping software expense, but they want to have, it seems like more training and awareness, which is easy. So I need to find out a little bit more about what they want. I need to alter that gap, that 4-year gap, into more like a and currently I have it down as self
improvement, or
professional improvement, because I've got my CISSP, I got my CC, I got my MS900, I got my OSINT. I've gotten like 5 certs or more in the last 4 years.
Yeah, it's easy to justify that as a sabbatical or something like that, even Cliff. There's a lot of good ways to posture that of, hey, I had an opportunity to take a couple years off and work on improving my technical skills. Wouldn't you do the same if you had the opportunity? That'll shut up an interviewer or a recruiter pretty quick on that one.
Not to mention when they see, anyways, I'll stop there.
Keep it up, man. Good
Yeah,
job.
I will say this real quick, man. I would suggest if you get the opportunity, with the software thing, just to get your feet wet again and, start clocking some actual, work time, it'll start to look better, I guess. What do you think, Josh? I mean,
You're spot on, Paul. Yeah, you're spot on. Cliff and I have chatted a little bit about that, but no, he's on the right path. Everyone's got their own kind of situation.
However, the first thing you said that turned me off was software. I am not a developer. I'm not a coder. I am everything.
How to learn.
I'm infrastructure. I'm business continuity, disaster recovery, incident response. I am not a coder.
Nice. Well, on that note, I got a poll launched that kind of is in relation to that of kind of when you pass the CISSP, what's the next step for you? So I'd love it if you guys put an answer into the poll because I'm curious as well. I know when I got my CISSP, the first thing that I did was ask for a raise or promotion. I did not get the raise that I wanted to, so I got a new job that gave me the raise that I wanted. So I'm curious what your guys' kind of end goals or next steps that you have on your mind. So I've worked with most of you, I think almost all of you, Venkat and VJ. I know we're still kind of new working together. I'm so glad you're here in the group. Let's see. I know I saw, yeah, Calvin is here too. Okay, so you guys are pretty familiar, I think, with the poll functionality. Just a quick refresher. The activities pane in the bottom right-hand corner has the shapes. And if you navigate into the polls, there's that icebreaker that's launched in there. But I'm so glad you guys are here. Seriously, I just need to pause and thank you for the work that you're putting in. I so enjoy our times together every week. I'd look forward to them. It's just fun seeing you guys study and pass and keep working. So you guys all know my story and why I'm here. Just thank you. Please keep that up. Cliff has been doing awesome. Love that he's still showing up. He's such a valuable resource for the group, and you guys have been engaging in the school community really well. Does anyone have challenges or successes they want to bring up and share? Jarrett and Cliff were chatting about some studying things. I missed the first part of your guys' conversation, but this is kind of an open-ended opportunity for us to share what is working and what is not lately in our studies and what we're after. So who's got something on their mind?
On the poll, I just wish you would allow multiple selections because
Multiple selections.
I want to do Bravo and Charlie.
Okay, what's the next? Do you have a next cert picked out, Cliff?
CCSP most likely.
Okay, yeah,
I should have done a long time ago.
that's an easy one. You can knock that out quick.
Especially after a CISSP. But
yeah, your management experience and healthcare, you'll get that quick.
So, but no, CCSP most likely will be the next one. I've had some people suggest CISM, which is ISACA, which would be, I could see how people look at, well, he's doing multiple vendors, he's doing multiple tests. So it's just, but no, right now I'm looking for my next job that's going to appreciate my skill set.
Good. I like that answer. That's pretty common. Even if it's the same employer or a different employer, you did something good, you deserve the bump up in either responsibilities, hopefully definitely pay. So yeah, who else has got something they want to share?
Yeah. So for me, I currently work in internal audit. I come from a background of IT audit.
Yeah.
So I'm slowly trying to shift into more of a security type of a role. So but not like an entry role. So I think CISSP will give me that leverage to kind of like do a lateral movement or
Yeah.
something into security because I really want to move away from all the controls and auditing stuff. It's kind of monotonous.
I don't blame you at all, Calvin. Yeah, I work as a compliance analyst right now, and the technical aspect of security is way more enjoyable, way more fun and engaging. So I applaud you for
Sure.
wanting to make that transition. Just
Yeah.
so that you have this perspective in the back of your mind. One of the strengths you're going to bring to the table that a lot of people are missing in our field is organizational context. That
Yeah.
because you've done auditing, you understand how controls impact the whole organization, how they fit into place, what sort of things auditors are expecting to have. That is a very valuable skill set. People might not love that job, but boy, you've learned a lot of good things that you're going to get to be able to apply. It'll put you in a valuable position amongst your peers.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's great to see. Okay, so we had Alex. Love seeing you here, man. Tro, glad you're here. Excellent. Okay, so we'll get started here. I think I've met just about all of you, so we'll move into practice questions. We also are going to do a little bit of a review of PKI and cryptography. We'll give you this. Hopefully, we have a couple more people that can join us that had specifically asked questions about this. But Sam, Morton, and Sandra had sent me some practice questions. Thank you, 1,000 times thank you. I just love getting those practice questions, and they're better than what I would curate myself. So really appreciate that. I am going to put a link in the chat real quick to this. You guys have all seen this, but I want to make sure you have it every week. If you submit practice questions to me, I work on a Mac all day, and it is so hard to transition from a Mac to my Windows workstation. I lost all my copy and paste. Okay. In the chat. So here's a link to this page in the chat. There's this not very lovely looking form down here, but if you use this form, you can submit me practice questions. They'll go directly to my inbox. Sandra had brought up the point of maybe having bulk practice questions. I asked that you just make sure that they're ones that you would actually like to see in a study group that we go through. But if you have bulk practice questions, you're welcome to send me a message on School, and we can just work out a different arrangement for that. But thank you for sending those over. I really appreciate that. So, we have an option. I'm going to give you guys an option here. We can start by doing a little bit of PKI review, which is kind of what we wrapped up with on last week. But sometimes there's these concepts where you just have to do the same thing a couple of times before it really sets in and clicks. So we have a PKI review that has some encryption aspects to it as well, and the use of symmetric and asymmetric keys. And then we have practice questions as well that we're going to go through. So you guys can pick. Do you want to go through the more learning review stuff first, or would you rather just dive straight into practice questions and see how things go? Who's got a preference on a shout out for us?
Yeah, if we can recap the PKI and then jump into it.
You got it, Paul. I think that's a good one because we got good amount of pre-PKI questions. Let's see. I see I have a message from VJ. It's your notification School about the topic of the day. Yeah, great question, VJ. So our moderator in the group, Sarah, has just been a wonderful participant. She is working towards her CISSP as well. She does a topic of the day or topic of the week that she'll post, and she'll usually pin it in the School platform. So I'm not usually the one that will do that, but if you look for her username is SM. So if you look for that, she should have, I don't know if you can subscribe or follow her, but she has some great content that she puts out. April, lovely to see you. Glad you're here. You're just in time. Okay.
Thank you.
So we are going to jump into a PKI review, which is what we kind of trailed off on last time. Our practice questions are mostly related to this. This is coming from Domain 3, Security Architecture and Engineering. So we are going to start by talking about the Diffie-Hellman exchange. Now, I'm going to pause before we go into this, and I'm going to give you guys a peek at how this works from a math perspective. We are not going to go through this from a math perspective at all, but I want you guys to understand there's the deeper principles that are going on, but we're going to take a step back just so that we can understand from a big picture what Diffie-Hellman is, what it's doing for us, how it's helping us accomplish establishing these connections here. So to walk through this, couple of things that you might see on the exam. You might see a relation to a prime number. That's really important in these encryption algorithms and cryptography. Prime numbers are important. Don't ask me why, but there's someone who's a mathematician will be able to give a much better explanation, and that's not the level we're going to go into here. But when we are going through the key selection process, the participants or whoever's doing this is starting out by creating their private key. Their private key goes through some computational round that generates their public key based out of that. And you can see these different math algorithms here. We're not going to go into what those are, what they mean. The really important thing to understand when we're talking about asymmetric cryptography is what these algorithms actually do for us. So when we talk about symmetric encryption, we have one key. And if we pass a piece of data through that key, it comes out on the other end encrypted. And if we pass that encrypted data through the same key, we get unencrypted data, symmetric cryptography. Asymmetric, we have two keys. And the thing that makes it just so incredible is that you can encrypt with either key and you can decrypt with its reciprocal. You can't encrypt and decrypt with the same key, and you can do it in either direction. This is really a mathematical discovery that solved a huge problem in cryptography, because if we're dealing with symmetric keys, think of it like you're passing notes in a class and you write down a secret word of how you're going to actually start talking in code if you have some code worked out with a buddy. You have to have a key that you're going to use so that you're both on the same page. When I get something that's encrypted, how do I get it decrypted? Public key exchange or public key infrastructure and asymmetric cryptography really changed the game for us, because we now have a secure way through the Diffie-Hellman exchange that we're going to go through to generate a single secure key, a symmetric key, without having prior knowledge of each other. It's a really powerful cryptography concept here. So if you guys are interested in getting a copy of all of this, you reach out and let me know. I would not encourage it for your study unless you're wanting to go to sleep or anything like that. So we'll go through it at a high level, what the Diffie-Hellman exchange is helping us to accomplish and how it's working. Anyone have questions before we really dive into this? I'll wait for it to come out on VHS. You cracked me up, Paul. Nice.
Sorry, man.
Okay, so let's go through this. I'm going to try and back up to the right spot here. I'll zoom in a little bit. Okay, so we've got our classics. We got Bob and Alice here that we're working with, and they want to start a conversation. And what they don't have is a shared key. So they can't start a conversation using symmetric encryption, because how would they be able to exchange the key over the internet in a secure way? So we use the Diffie-Hellman exchange. The way that this happens, Bob is going to start, and he's going to generate his key pair. So he generates his private key, and from that, he derives his public key. Alice is doing the exact same thing. She's going to generate her key pair. So they both have a private key, which only they will have access to. So no one else in the world should, in theory, have access to that. And their public key, which is the opposite. In theory, we want pretty much everyone to have access to this. It's completely public. When they create those public keys, so they could either share them directly with each other. Let's say this is an internal application. So when we talk about public key infrastructure, it does work on the whole internet when we involve a certificate authority, but we don't have to involve a certificate authority. If this is internal within a single organization, if Bob and Alice both work for the same company, they might actually just share these keys with each other or have a key repository for their company. But regardless, if we're going to start communicating this way, we need access to each other's public keys, either through some internal source or through a certificate authority. Certificate authority, their job is to manage public keys, and alongside that are certificates. It's how we manage identity. So that's a key aspect in private and public keys. Public keys are used when they're tied to a certificate authority to establish our identity and our authenticity. So if I go to a certificate authority like DigiCert and I say, hey, my name is Josh Botz and I would like a certificate because I want to start a website and I want anyone that comes to that website to know it's Josh Botz's website, couldn't have been anyone else's. Well, that certificate authority is going to validate my identity. They'll issue me a certificate. And then anywhere I apply that certificate, if someone visits that and has within their work system a chain of trust, then they will automatically trust me as well as inherited. So we'll talk about chain of trust here in a moment, but let's continue on with this. So Bob and Alice both have their key pairs. They share their public key pairs or their public keys with each other, either directly through their company or through a certificate authority. Once they have those key pairs, they can start communicating asynchronously. So they can start a conversation, and in that secure channel, they can have a shared secret key that they come up with. So Diffie-Hellman is a way for us to use this asynchronous method of getting keys established, of defining them together, and then going through and determining what our shared secret key is going to be. That's all it is. Diffie-Hellman can get a little bit complicated or convoluted when some people can explain it. You've seen the color wheels of people mixing and matching things, and that's absolutely accurate. If you want to look more at the math side of things and how that works, it's a helpful analogy in that context. For the context that we need, you can understand that there's a lot of math that's going on behind the scenes to support this, but all we're just creating a key pair. We're making sure that whoever needs access to our public key has access to it. At that point, we can start an asynchronously encrypted communication. Once we have that, we can create a shared secret key. So this is a transition here from asynchronous, where we have multiple keys, to synchronous. So who can why would we want to go back to a shared key? If we're already set up here and totally able to communicate with asynchronous using public key infrastructure, why would we even bother with a shared key? Who's got an idea of why that would be the case?
For speed?
Speed, yeah, absolutely. Speed, latency, that's 100% accurate. Thank you, Mercy. So when we are doing this, when we're using two different key pairs, there's definitely some latency. When we're using a single key pair to encrypt and decrypt, it becomes a lot faster. Here's an example use case of why this could be so much faster. Let's say that we're working with like a TLS tunnel, something along those lines. We have our encryption set up. We decided maybe we want to use public key infrastructure. Maybe we want to use symmetric cryptography. We're not sure. We could have a firewall that is set up with that shared secret key, and it can use that same key to encrypt and decrypt anything that passes through it. Versus if you have public and private keys, if someone sends me something, I'm the only one with that private key, which is great for security, not good for speed if I'm the only one that can decrypt it. So yeah, great call out, Mercy. Well done. Okay, so let's look at chain of trust on here so we can explain that. We talked about that a little bit. Who had, without, I mean, you guys can see what my notes are. Who wants to tell us a little bit about chain of trust? Who's got some ideas on that and how it relates to certificate authorities?
Well, I'll have a go at it.
Yeah,
so,
please.
So everything is based on trust, right? So for us to trust that a entity is what it claims to be, we need it to be certified by somebody that we trust, right? So if Bob, for Bob, if Bob says I'm Bob, or somebody says I'm Bob, and I don't trust Bob, but I trust Alice. So I need some certification from Alice to say that, oh, this person is indeed Bob, right?
That's
so
exactly right.
that's one link, and so on. And then, you know, but how did I initially trust Alice? Well, I needed Joe to tell me that this is indeed Alice, and so on and so forth. It goes all the way back to the accepted public, entities that are trusted by everybody in the industry to have be the people who can be trusted. So there's a root authority at the end of it. And from the root, you have to have this chain of trust. A tells B is B, and I trust B. Then because I trust B, when it says C is C, then I trust C, and so on. That's the chain.
Exactly right. Yeah, really well done there, Anwar. You explained that perfectly. We have different types of certificate authorities. There's a lot of different certificate authority organizations and companies out there. And so how do I know which one to trust? Do I trust DigiCert? Okay, well, I don't want to add 10,000 certificates to my computer to know to trust every site that they trust. So I say, okay, I am willing to trust anything that DigiCert says that they trust. And they maintain a revocation list. So if they decide they don't trust or want to revoke a certificate, then they can blacklist it for me. So it's inherited trust, exactly like Anwar was explaining to us. We have different types. We have root and we have intermediate. There are a couple other types. Those are the two we'll focus on here. But real quick, we can actually just look at these, and it's really neat. So there used to be kind of a lock icon on a lot of your browser windows here. Has settings now a lot of the times. Connection is secure. This means it's going over TLS, and we have a certificate in play. Look at that. You guys can't see what I'm seeing, can you?
No.
Okay, hang tight. Let me share a different way and see if that works. Okay, let's try that. Okay, yeah, there we go. So in this section right here, there used to be a lock that would just tell you that it's encrypted going through HTTPS, and it's got more data in here now, which is great. So we can look at the connection is secure, and right there, our certificate is valid. So let's just open this up and we can look at a certificate. I don't know if you guys can see this okay. I can't zoom in, unfortunately, but we have the common name, organizational unit, organization. These are different terms that you'll have in the details. So these are different fields that people might care about, especially if we're talking about inherited trust or a chain of trust as well. We can see this came from Google Trust Services. So Google platform was probably the one that issued their cert. And then we have the actual certificate. Now, does this look like an actual, what do you think this is? What does this look like to you guys?
Message digest.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Paul. Bingo. This looks like a message digest. What's another word for message digest? Hash. Exactly. You guys nailed it. Same thing for the public key. So if we wanted to check Whimsical, this is the site that I'm on, its public key, we could find the file for that, take the hash, and this is what we should get back. Any site that we go to of Whimsicals, if we find this certificate, this is what we'll be able to find here. So this is what the details are in there. There's nothing more that we need to go into here, but I want to show you one other thing. Hang tight. Okay. So I'm on a Windows workstation. You can find this on yours. This is my certificate library of what comes with the workstation. So our root certificates come from our operating system typically. So Microsoft would have provisioned these when I installed my Windows on here. So I have the option to have personal certificates. We've talked a little bit about self-signed certificates, so it might fall into that category. Here's our trusted root certificate authorities though. Let's go into there. So you can see there's DigiCert, Komodo, AAA, Entrust, Global Sign. These are all of the root certificate authorities that Microsoft at least has chosen to trust. So if Global Sign trusts it, then my workstation trusts it because it's within my root certification authorities. Intermediate, very similar. First of all, you see there's a revocation list right here. So you can see VeriSign. They had something that looks like it just expired a long time ago, more than a decade ago, so they revoked it. We can look at other intermediate ones as well. So your root certificate authority may issue a certification towards a body that can do its own certifications as well. Think of Google. How many certificates do you think Google has? So they might use intermediate certificate authorities to help manage that chain of trust a little bit better. So you can have self-created certificates that you use in here, and they're a part of your chain of trust. And you have an inherited chain of trust as well, which Mark called out for us. So excellent. So that's chain of authority, or excuse me, chain of trust with the certificate authority. Certificate authorities, again, are the ones that are managing our public keys and our certificates. Let's see, one thing I wanted to mention to you guys about certificate authorities as well. Hopefully I'll think of it and I'll come back to you, or come back to it on there. But okay, this is the simplicity of this exchange that's going on. Each individual can create their own key pair. They make sure that their public key is accessible, and then they can start a conversation. As soon as they have a conversation started using asymmetric cryptography, using this method, then exactly like was called out, we can switch to synchronous encryption. And that's just a lot faster for us, less latency. It's not as secure, but it works great once we have a session established together. So who's got any more questions on this concept before we just, we'll go over some scenarios next so we start to use these a bit more. Anyone have questions before we shift over? Okay, a lot of it's talking about the exact same things. So this is where we got our certificates. Now let's look at what we're going to do with them. Let me move some of this stuff out of the way. Okay, when we are talking about public key infrastructure, when we're talking about using these encryption methodologies, and especially when we get into using signatures, and Paul uses the term message digest, which is very, very similar, closely related terms here in their use. The principles of security that we care about most are these four. We care about the confidentiality, and we care about integrity. You'll notice in the CIA triad that availability is not listed here. It's not that we don't care about availability. It's just not what we care about most for this conversation. So we definitely care about confidentiality. No one should be reading our emails. We absolutely care about integrity. No one should be changing our emails. If I send an email, I want to know that's the email that got delivered and no one messed with it. Authenticity. This is a gap that I had in my understanding about public key infrastructure and how this works. I didn't understand that we needed to validate authenticity or non-repudiation. We'll use those terms almost interchangeably here from both the sender and the recipient side. We need to validate both of those. That was a big gap that I had when I just thought authenticity. Okay, we're done. But that's not true in this. So these are the four concepts that we care about most for this conversation. So let's go down and let's talk about Alice and Bob and how this is going to work. Okay, so we have Bob and Alice. We've already gone through that they created their keys. So we got Bob, he's got his private and public key, and we've got Alice here. Where did we determine that those public keys are going to live? Who manages those for us? Calvin,
Certificate authority.
Yeah, thank you, Sandra. Exactly. Certificate authority. So we'll go ahead and move these up here because the certificate authority can now take care of them for us. The certificate authority, if anyone wants to start a conversation with Bob, they'll be able to get access to his public key that way to start a communication. So yeah, great job. So the certificate authority has our public keys. All right, let's say that Bob here wants to send a message to Alice. Here's the other key distinction of what I missed when I was studying PKI and what one of the aspects that made it so confusing and frustrating for years, well past when I took my exam. I didn't understand that there was differences in the way encryption was being applied to the message and how it was being applied to the signature. It's two different ways. We'll go over what those different ways are, but I didn't realize that there were multiple areas of encryption that were going on here and that we were using our keys in a little bit of a different way. So Bob wants to send a message to Alice. Let's just focus on the message for now. Let's just focus on the message. So I'm going to bring this list of what we care about most in the world right now. This is what we care about most in the world for this conversation. If Bob wants to send an email to Alice, specifically in the message body, what of these 4 things does he probably care about the absolute most? What's his number 1 priority in that message to Alice? 9 times out of 10.
Confidentiality.
Bingo. Confidentiality. That's exactly right. We have got to keep that message confidential. It's not always the case that that's important, but boy, if all of our emails were confidential, we would be pretty happy as security professionals. That's exactly right. So we want to do something with the message body that is going to make it so that only Alice is the one that's able to open it. It's for her eyes only. So when we are working with encryption and decryption, it really is helpful to look at the pair concept. So let's just zoom in on Alice's keys, because we're going to send Alice a message here. So when we want to do encryption and decryption using asymmetric cryptography, we have 2 keys in place. It can be tricky, especially if you're in an exam, just recalling what does what in the equation. And the 2 important concepts to know here. One is you have to use both keys, in the sense that if you encrypt with Alice's private key, you have to decrypt with the opposite. If you encrypt with the public, you have to decrypt with the private. Can't encrypt and decrypt with private, can't encrypt and decrypt with public. Very critical. Really small points. You guys probably all have a good understanding of that. But one of the things that makes this nice is if we can identify on either end, encryption or decryption with clarity, what key we need to use, then we can assume what the other key is that we need. So let's explain that in a little bit clearer terms. We want to send Alice a message that is confidential. Only Alice is the one that should be able to open it. So what key should we expect Alice to decrypt with?
Our private key.
Yeah, so we want to decrypt with Alice's private key. So by rule of elimination, what are we encrypting with?
Our public key.
Her public key. That's exactly right. There's nothing complicated about that. But if we want to make sure only Alice can open that email, it's easier to start from the decryption side of things versus thinking about the encryption, because we want to focus on Alice is the only person. It's for her eyes only. Okay, what is the key that is for her eyes only? Her private key. Excellent.
Hey, Josh, I want to put a little spin on this, if you will permit me.
Please do.
So, perfect. If you want Alice to be the only one opening a document, we know what is the one thing only Alice has, well, her private key. And therefore, we sign with her public key. Easy enough? Great. What if Bob wants to send a message to Alice and he wants Alice to know that it was only he that sent that message? So, right?
Absolutely.
So there you go. So now he's okay. Anybody else can read. I don't really care. But he wants Alice to know for sure that this message came from Bob and only Bob. Now, what is the one thing that Bob has that nobody else has? Bob's private key. In this case, Bob will sign with his private key, and of course, Alice will decrypt with her public key, with his public key, and therefore knowing that this message came from Bob and only Bob. I just want to take a symmetric. I shouldn't use that word. I wanted to take another example in the other direction so that we can demystify this whole private-public thing.
No, you spelled that out perfectly, Anwar. Yeah, you kind of spelled out exactly what we're going to walk through here. Really well done. I can tell you understand that really well. Yeah, good job.
Cool.
So let's reiterate kind of what Anwar was helping us understand here. So we've established that if Bob wants to keep the message confidential, he needs to make sure the decryption is happening with Alice's private key, which is great because he only has access to her public key. So it's the only thing that he could have encrypted it with other than using his own keys, which is exactly what Anwar is leading us towards. So let's pause here still for a moment. We have validated confidentiality now. I have encrypted a message using Alice's public key. She's the only one that can open it, so no one else in the world can get access to it. So we have validated confidentiality. We have validated one other piece of this. Which one of these remaining 3 did we also help to validate by encrypting this way on the message? Who's got an idea on which one of those 3 we helped out with? We've already pretty much talked about it.
Integrity and non-repudiation.
Yeah, so integrity, not quite. We're almost integrity, but non-repudiation, exactly right. So non-repudiation, we want to make sure that when we send a message to Alice, she cannot deny that she received it or that she was the one that opened it. And we've kind of done that here. If Alice uses her private key to open it, and she's the only one with her private key, then we've established authenticity, or like Sandra said, we've established non-repudiation on the recipient side of things. Oops. On the recipient side. So the message is confidential, and we know that Alice is the only one that's going to get it and open it. So it's non-reputable from the recipient side. So great job. Now, Anwar led us to this perfectly into the next step here. First, does anyone have questions about how this is working from a message encryption point? We'll flip this arrow in a little bit and kind of go through this again. Does anyone have questions before we move on to the signature?
Yeah, Josh, I just want to clarify, you're not getting into the signature yet, right? This is just a general email sent with no signature.
Yep, that's the next thing we're going to go through. Is
Okay.
the signature. Cool. Yeah, perfect.
So Josh,
yeah,
so,
April.
So basically, for confidential, if whoever is the recipient, they will be decrypting it. So if we have a conversation, so if the question says, well, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
So whoever we want to show them that it's confidential, like I guess I'm trying to understand, like Alice is the recipient. So the recipient will always have the decrypt, the private key for confidential, period.
Yeah.
You're saying,
When we're
okay.
trying to validate confidentiality, you're exactly right, April. We want to, so I like the term for your eyes only, because it kind of encapsulates the confidentiality piece.
Yes.
And the non-repudiation from the sender side. So from thinking of the concept for your eyes only, if I'm going to send an email to you and I want to make sure only April gets this, it's for her eyes only. I need it to be confidential, and I need to make sure that no one else but April can open that. It's non-repudiable. Then exactly, I'm going to encrypt it using the opposite of what you need to open it with, which is your private key. So I'm encrypting using your public key. Anyone can encrypt stuff for you, but only you can open it. So it's confidential at that point. Now, Sandra called out that we don't have integrity yet. And technically, if we don't have integrity, our confidentiality is not strong, which is exactly what we're going to go through in signatures. But yeah, you nailed that, April. If we want it to be confidential, the opener should be using their private key because they're the only one that has it. Yeah, Sandra.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
So
good.
About the when you're signing, because I want to make sure that it's coming from me, the non-repudiation. So I'm gonna sign it with my private key. Isn't that the signature?
Yeah. So let's walk through that together. You guys are all nailing this. So let's discuss.
That's why I said it provided integrity and non-repudiation, because I'm signing it with my private key. So
Yes.
it's coming from me.
Yeah, exactly. So we have the message body, which is what we've done this round of encryption, and you all have gotten this perfect. We're going to talk about the signature next and what a signature does, how it validates integrity for us, like you called out, Sandra, and then how we can validate non-repudiation from the sender side. So if I send an email to April, how does April know that I got it? And that's what a signature helps us to do, is validate these remaining 2 principles that we need. So Paul called out early for us the concepts of a message digest or a hash. So what is happening here is first let's talk about the problem. Let's back up before we look at the solution. Let's talk about the problem that we have if we don't have integrity and authenticity or non-repudiation from the sender side. So let's take the scenario. Bob is sending this email to Alice. Alice gets the message, she decrypts it with her private key, and she's able to look at the message body. Ignore the signature for now. We haven't signed it yet. Let me just put a box over it even. Ignore the signature. We just have a message right now. Alice is the only one that's able to open it. But when she reads the message, how does she know it hasn't been tampered with? And how does she know that Bob was the one that sent it? Anyone has access to Alice's public key. So anyone could have encrypted things. Anyone could have sent it to her, could have been claiming to be from Bob, and she doesn't really have a way to validate that yet. What would be the problem if I've got Evil Bob down here? Let's bring Evil Bob down in the mix. Evil Bob is going to send almost the same exact thing. He's going to try and send the same exact message to Alice. He's going to use this same exact, not a single thing has to change. He's still using her key, but let's say he changes the message. He claims to be from Bob, and he changes some important data in there. She doesn't really have a way to validate that for sure. So we need to make sure that we're using Bob's keys as well as an aspect of this. And that's where signatures come into play, as you guys have identified. So now let's look at a signature. I'm going to move Evil Bob down here from now. We'll get to play with him in a little bit. So a message signature. We've called out that it's a hash. It's an encrypted hash. It's a message digest. What this is it's validating what this message is. So if any character in it changes, anything at all, the hash will completely change. But we need to protect that hash. That was the problem down here. We can have a hash of the email, but we could just change the email and take a new hash, and Alice would never know that we changed it. So again, we need non-repudiation there. With the signature, what we're trying to establish is we're going to take an encryption, we're going to encrypt the hash of the message with one of our keys. So if we're Bob, and we're going to send Alice a message, and she wants to make sure it could have only come from Bob. It was from his eyes only, so to speak. And again, integrity. Only Bob was the one that wrote this. No one else could have changed it. It was from his eyes only, so to speak. What would I want to decrypt the signature with? If I'm Alice, what would I use to decrypt that signature if I want to know? Only Bob sent that to me. Yeah.
Public key.
Oh yeah, Anwar called out the public key. Yeah, that's exactly right. Cliff, did you have something else for us there?
Well, actually, before we get too far away, on the Diffie-Hellman, I posted a link in the chat on somebody else expressing the Diffie-Hellman that might help people understand it the way I did. I couldn't find the one that I actually did, but this gentleman did it pretty well. And again, I watched it at 2x speed, and I haven't confirmed everything, but
yeah,
looking at what he showed may help.
Yeah, absolutely. I just pulled this video up here. This is the YouTube channel is Computer File. And I don't know if I've watched this specific video that you shared, but I've watched plenty of his while studying for my CISSP. I haven't seen that video or that channel in quite a while, but yeah, great share out, Cliff, because those resources are amazing.
And Diffie-Hellman is difficult to understand, but him doing the colors along, it helped a lot.
Good. Yeah, good call out, Cliff. So I would encourage you, if you haven't, go into the chat, find that link to a YouTube video that Cliff posted, bookmark it, or just pull it up off to the side for later on and have that on your hand. But yeah, I can recommend that channel. I haven't watched their content for years, but I remember it being pretty good stuff. So thank you, Cliff. All right. So Anwar answered for us. If we are going to be, for Bob, we're sending Alice a message, and when Alice decrypts the message with her private key, we want to make sure she has some way to validate its integrity and its non-repudiation from Bob's side of things. So she can only decrypt things with Bob's public if that's what Bob used, if he used his key pair, which is what he has to do. So if Bob takes and encrypts the hash of the message, that's what the signature is. He's going to encrypt the hash. Anyone can decrypt the hash, but no one could have encrypted it except Bob. So when Alice gets this message, she can decrypt it, only her. She can read the message. She can take her own hash of the message. She can look at the signature because she can take Bob's public key and decrypt the signature. And when she's decrypting the signature, she's getting that hash. Now she can compare, this is what I got, and this is what Bob sent me for these hashes. If they match up, then I know that this message has integrity. It wasn't tampered with. The hashes match. From an authenticity side, non-repudiation on the sender, same concept. It's for your eyes only. So if I opened it with Bob's public key, the only person that could have encrypted that is Bob with his private key. So we're going to just erase this. We're going to flip this arrow and we're going to walk through this one more time. I know PKI can get hammered quite a lot when you're studying. I don't want to be just emphasizing it more than it needs to be, but I bring this up because this was a huge point of confusion for me when I was preparing for my exam. So I don't want you guys to go in the exam with the same sense of trepidation or fear of like, I have no idea what Ike is. And so, Paul, what's on your mind, man?
Real quick, what's the danger in once Bob sends it with his signature and the public internet can decrypt it? They're not getting the message, but is there a danger of them decrypting it and still seeing the hash?
Great call out, Paul. Yeah, absolutely. So when we are using public keys, Paul brought up an important point. A public key, anyone has access to. So if Bob signs or encrypts something with his private key, anyone in the world can decrypt it, not just Alice. And so Paul called out great that the signature here, anyone in the world can decrypt it. And they'll get the hash of that message. Now, the unique thing that we chatted about, I think this was last week, the difference between encryption algorithms and hashing algorithms is their reversibility. If something goes into a hashing algorithm, what comes out on the other end can't be reversed back through. It's almost always a fixed length, unique value. Versus encryption, obviously has to go both ways. So this signature is of the hash. So in theory, if we're using a good hashing algorithm, we shouldn't be able to get any data, anything useful out of that. All we would have is something that we could use to compare to a hash of the original message. Does that answer your question, Paul, on the kind of confidentiality aspect of the signature?
Yeah, it makes sense now. Thanks.
Okay, cool. Sandra, you had a question as well?
Yeah. So I vaguely remember for PKI, it's like a hybrid cryptography where this is asymmetric, where there's a public key and a private key. But is this where, I don't know, Diffie-Hellman or TLS, like where you're sharing the session key? Do we need to encrypt our public key? Like where do we get the public, like if I'm going to sign it with my private key, how do you get my public key? Are we encrypting that first?
Really good question. So how do I get your public key? Well, for the most part, I'll get it through the certificate authority. This just happens automatically in most scenarios behind the scenes. So when I navigate to whimsical.com and I get this certificate, all of that's happening behind the scenes. There are ways where this has to be explicitly configured. It's more internal where you would have to do it. Now, you brought up the question that was great. We're looking at asymmetric cryptography. Where does the shared key come in? That's a great question. This is PKI at work. Once Bob and Alice have a conversation started, they can create a shared key. So if they wanted to, now that they have a secure way to communicate back and forth, where they have confidentiality, now that we've added a signature, we have integrity. The signature also gives us non-repudiation from the sender side, and we already had non-repudiation from the recipient side, the way we encrypted our message. Once we have this established, I can send you any data that I want and it's secure, including a key that we would share together. A synchronous key, not asynchronous. Now, This would all take place through the shared key. We would ignore the public and private keys completely. When Bob wants to send a message to Alice, he would encrypt the message using the shared key. Alice would decrypt it using that shared same key. He can encrypt the entire message at that point. Doesn't necessarily need to worry about signatures even, because this shared key manages a lot of these aspects. If we used Diffie-Hellman to come up with a shared key, well, it's confidential. That's the whole point of Diffie-Hellman. We need to come up with a shared key, but we need to do so in a confidential way over a public space like the internet. So a shared key, if we're both using it, it's integrous as well. Integrity isn't really validated necessarily by a shared key, but authenticity is, depending on who else has access to this key. If it's just Bob and Alice, yep, there's integrity, or excuse me, there's non-repudiation there. We're the only two people with the key. So if I didn't decrypt it, someone did. I bet it's you. We actually have a couple practice questions that might help illustrate that a little bit more, that bring in this concept of a shared key. So hopefully those practice questions will also help. Does that answer your question partially, Sandra? Do you have a kind of a follow-up question that I could tackle on there?
Yeah, that was good. Thank you.
Okay. When we have the practice questions, I hope they'll reinforce those, but send me a message or let me know if it doesn't. Yeah, good call. Okay. So now that big jerk Josh is going to delete the whole thing. We're going to flip it around. Whoa. Okay. We got a crooked arrow now. Bob and Alice are going to flip spaces. Alice is going to send a message to Bob. And let's go in reverse order. Let's think about the signature first. So first of all, who can refresh my memory? Which of these four principles does a signature help us to validate? Let me see if I can put this in a list for us. There we go. Which of these four does a signature help us validate? Who's got one of them for us?
Authenticity of the sender.
Of the sender, okay, yep.
If it's signed with the private.
Yeah, and what's the other one?
Integrity.
Integrity, excellent. So we want to tackle these guys first. I'll bold them, or I'll unbold them, I guess, for now. I'll just leave them how they were. Okay, so we're doing the signature. We want to validate integrity and non-repudiation on the sender side. Alice is our sender in this situation. So Alice wants to send a message to Bob, and Bob needs to be able to make sure that only Alice is the one that sent him that email. What does Alice need to encrypt the signature with?
Her private key.
Yeah. So if she encrypts the signature, which again, all the signature is it's a hash of the message that is then encrypted. So we're going to encrypt the hash of the message. That gives us integrity when we have authenticity from the sender side, because only she could have signed it. Only she was the one that could have encrypted that hash. So if we decrypt the hash, we know that she was the one that encrypted it. So if we use Alice's private key to encrypt the signature, what do we have to use to decrypt it?
Alice's public key.
Public key.
Yeah, we got to use your public key. So Bob either will get that directly from Alice, or he'll go up to the certificate authority and get that from them and have her public key. So now when he gets the message, he can decrypt the signature, look at the hash that Alice encrypted, and compare it to the message body to see if it matches up. If it does match up, okay, we got integrity. And if he's able to decrypt it using Alice's public key, he knows Alice is the one that sent it, because only she could have encrypted it using her private key. Okay, so great job. We've got these two of our security principles covered here. Now let's go look at the message. So let's focus on confidentiality as our first part. It's for your eyes only, Bob. What does Bob need to decrypt with if it's for his eyes only?
Bob's private key.
Bob's private key. Bingo. And if we encrypt with Bob's, or if we decrypt with Bob's private key, what do we have to encrypt with?
Bob's public key.
Bingo. Okay. So Alice, when she's sending a message to Bob, she encrypts the message using Bob's public key. Who else can encrypt messages like this and send them to Bob? I know I'm asking the same question a lot of the same ways. It's okay.
Well, no one else, because it's only two keys, right? So
You're on the right track. Yeah. So if anyone can encrypt a message to Bob. Anyone can go find his certificate, grab his public key, and they can encrypt messages to Bob all day. Let's look at the signature piece. Who can decrypt this signature once Alice has signed it? Who can decrypt that signature if someone intercepted this email?
Only Bob.
Close. So let's bring Evil Bob into the mix here. So what we're going to do, let's talk about how this works in the case of a man-in-the-middle attack. Let's make this a little bit more interesting here. Okay. So Evil Bob is going to be our man-in-the-middle player. He's going to sit in on this conversation and try and figure out what's going on. Okay. Who can tell me what an evil twin attack is? Anyone got this? Not directly related to what we're talking about, but who knows what an evil twin attack is?
Somebody who pretends to be another person but is a malicious player.
Yeah, exactly. An evil twin attack, typically you'll see it on the context of routers, especially in Wi-Fi networks, not always, but you can have rogue access points. Specifically an evil twin attack. My brother owns a coffee shop chain. If I go into his coffee shop chain and I find the name of the Wi-Fi network, Mazevo Coffee is the name of it, then what's preventing me from just starting up my little travel router right there and naming my network as Mazevo Coffee _free, Mazevo Coffee _updated. I could name it that way, and it would be very easy to trick people into looking at my router. An evil twin attack can take it a step further and start having some different types of attacks that actually force traffic to come to Evil Bob's router, his evil twin router. The bottom line is that sort of thing it's an entry point to man-in-the-middle attacks, where Evil Bob is now sitting in the middle of Bob and Alice's communication, and anything that goes across this pipe, he can see. Now, if it's encrypted, he can still see it. It's just encrypted, so he's not really seeing anything of value. So we'll go through that. Cliff, I see you got your hand raised. What's up, man?
So does anybody know what the common terminology of a device that a man in the middle would use? Ding, 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 ding. It's a pineapple router.
Pineapple router. What's the name of the company that just sells those? Red Bug or something?
I'm not sure. Hack 5 does. I'm sure there's a lot of others, but no. Usually a device that's going to help with man-in-the-middle attacks is going to be called like a pineapple. What it is, it puts itself in with an SSID as a wireless router, and a lot of people will go ahead and see it, like say you're in a hotel, so they'll use the hotel's name. So, and you'll see one's encrypted, one's not encrypted. A lot of people say, well, I'll go for the unencrypted. It's easier. I don't have to put a password in. Well, that's a pineapple router. And then they're going to fake everything else that you're doing while they're not Nmap, but basically Wireshark, all your information that goes through them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Great call, Cliff. Yeah. Hack 5, if you guys get distracted, has a lot of really cool gadgets like this that can be a lot of fun to play around with. A Raspberry Pi can also do that pretty well. What Cliff is calling out, I get this is a complete side note, but I had the opportunity to do a live training with people once, and I got to do some hacking live. We did some password cracks, like brute forcing, did some dictionary attacks, and one of the things, like Cliff had mentioned, was we set up an evil twin router and did exactly what he was talking about. We launched a fake network, had people with their phones in the audience join the network. They would navigate to target.com and get redirected, or navigate to target.com, and we would have our social engineering the site ready to go to capture credentials. Really powerful attacks, and it will shock you how easy they are to deploy, really.
Yeah, and back in I think it was like 2003, I went down to Florida and actually trained with several 3-letter agencies like NSA and others, and we just walked around. We weren't even war driving, but the wireless presence that was there that we could just gain access to was silly back in 2003.
Yeah, a lot of neat attacks out there. Boy, I think that's the interesting side of cybersecurity. Calvin's got the right idea, getting out of GRC. All right. So let's look at this. Let's think about it if Evil Bob was in the mix. So let's get rid of this again. Alice is going to send a message to Bob, but Evil Bob is sitting right in the middle of their conversation. So anything we do, he can see. Now, this is in cybersecurity, this is the ideal situation in the sense that we would like to always act as if someone can see our communication, as if someone's inside of our network. That's the best attitude for us to have as security professionals. Yeah, Florence, you had a question? Oh, I lost Florence. Okay, well, she'll come back. Okay. So Evil Bob is now going to be eavesdropping on everything we do here. So Alice is going to send a message to Bob. What if, even if we don't know that Evil Bob is in the conversation, what of these 4 things do we care about the most? I know I'm asking you the 101 questions. That's okay. What do we care about the most on this exchange, regardless of whether Evil Bob is eavesdropping on us or not?
Integrity.
Integrity is right up there. In this circumstance, especially since Evil Bob is going to be our man in the middle, then confidentiality is the first principle that we want to concentrate on here. Integrity is absolutely the case too. But if we can keep the information confidential, it becomes a little bit more difficult for integrity to become a factor. But you're exactly right, because integrity does get addressed to a degree here. So if confidentiality is what we care about, Alice needs to encrypt with one of these keys that's going on. She needs Bob to be able to decrypt with another one. She wants to make sure Evil Bob cannot decrypt. So what does she need to encrypt? Just the message. Ignore the signature for a moment. What does she encrypt the message with? Okay, I'll start walking through these because I know I'm asking you guys a lot of questions that have very similar answers. And the reason just to reiterate, the reason I'm asking you guys these almost same questions over and over again, because I want them to become boring. I want you to get sick and tired of thinking about which one is the private key and public key and whose. Once it's boring, you're going to have a lot of confidence in the exam because you'll just be able to, okay, I've done this 10 times before. Let's move on. So if we want to send a message and we want to make sure Evil Bob cannot read this message and that Bob is the only one that should be able to open it, we're going to encrypt it with the opposite. Whoops. We're going to encrypt it with the opposite of what Bob needs to decrypt it with. So Alice has full access to Bob's public key. She encrypts her message. It's confidential now. She sends it to Bob. No one else can decrypt it except Bob. So he decrypts and gets it. We've established confidentiality, and we have established here authenticity from the recipient side. For your eyes only, when Bob opens this message, It's for his eyes only. He's the only one that could have gotten access to that data from a confidentiality perspective. And from Alice's perspective, only Bob could have opened it. He's the only one with his key. Now, evil Bob in this mix. What can and can't evil Bob do still that Alice is doing? Let's say he wanted to pretend to be Alice. What might evil Bob try and do? Again, let's neglect for the time being signatures and just focus on the message. What can evil Bob do that Alice just did?
He can encrypt the message and send his own message.
That's exactly right. He can do absolutely everything that Alice just did. He can do everything. He can get a message put together. He can encrypt it with Bob's public key. He gets it from the certificate authority, same way everyone else does. And if Bob opens it, I mean, it's confidential and there's authenticity from the recipient side. So that's nothing has changed. But we don't have integrity. So when Bob, the real Bob, opens this, he doesn't know if the message has been changed or not. When he decrypts it, he can take a hash of this message, but he has nothing to compare the hash to. He doesn't know, is this the message that Alice meant to send me? So great call out there. So let's get rid of this now. Now, let's focus on just the signature. Let's ignore this. Okay, we've talked about confidentiality and authenticity on the recipient's end. So now, like on War Called Out, we're going to go for integrity. We want to make sure that when Bob gets this email and he opens it, we need to have something for him to compare that hash to. Whenever you see hash or whenever you see integrity, link those two words very closely together in your exam. It'll save you some time. You guys all know that though. So when Bob gets this, he needs something to compare the hash of the email message to, even though the message is covered up here. So he needs to be able to validate it came from Alice. So if only Alice is the one that could have encrypted the hash, that could have signed the email, again, those are synonymous almost. What Alice is doing, she's going to sign the email. She's going to encrypt the hash. She's going to encrypt the message digest. All those terms mean the same exact things here. When she does that, only Alice could have signed it, but anyone can open it up. Now Bob has something to compare the hash to. So let's take this down to evil Bob. He just intercepted this message. What can evil Bob do with this message?
He can decrypt it, but he'll only see the hash.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Paul. Great job. Anyone in the world can decrypt the signature and they'll get the hash out of it. We're not after confidentiality of the hash. We want integrity is what we're after. So now that we've decrypted it, we just need something to compare it with, which is the hash of the message body. That's exactly right, Paul. Great job on it. So if we didn't, just take the weird example, we didn't encrypt the message. Alice forgot. It was fast morning. She forgot to encrypt the message. She did remember to thankfully take the hash of her message and encrypt that and make a signature. So she had some time. If she didn't encrypt the message, what is the problem here? What could evil Bob do with this if she forgot to encrypt the message?
Replace her message and make it look like it's his.
That's exactly right. He could replace the message in here very easily. So he could put any message he wants in here, but the signature is still there. So when Bob gets this, only Alice could have encrypted the hash, the original hash of her message. So when Bob gets this, even though the message has been changed, if he decrypts it using Alice's public key, then he knows only she could have encrypted it because she had to use her private key. So what happened in there is he validated authenticity from the sender side when he's decrypting that signature. And then when he decrypts that, what does he get? He gets the hash that Paul called out. Now he has something to compare the message hash and the signature to. If they match up, awesome. Nothing has changed. Integrity is validated at that point. What if they don't match up? What if Bob gets this email? Bob gets this email from Alice. He uses Alice's public key to decrypt the signature, and he compares the two hashes and they're different. What does that tell Bob?
It's been tampered with.
been tampered with. That's exactly right. Great job. It's been tampered with. So let's take this out of the equation again, and let's look at the whole scenario one last time to make sure it's really hammered in. Okay, same deal. Alice has already done this. Now we need to think about the message. Now we've established that it wasn't confidential before. It was just plain text. We forgot to encrypt it. We have established I guess we kind of already went through some of these. I'll cross those off. With the signature, we established integrity and authenticity from the sender side. So now we need to refocus on confidentiality and non-repudiation from the recipient side. So if we want it to be confidential, for Bob's eyes only, well, we need to use the for Bob's eyes only key to be the decryptor of that message. And we can only encrypt with the reciprocal. So Alice would go grab Bob's public key from the certificate authority. And as she's sending it, she'll encrypt the message with Bob's public. When he gets that message, only he can decrypt it. So we've got confidentiality. No one else has seen that but Bob. And no one else has received it or opened it other than Bob. Now, when Alice is sending the same message, she's encrypting the signature just a little bit differently. She's going to use her private key so that when Bob opened it, he has non-repudiation from the sender side. And then when he decrypts using Alice's public key, when he decrypts that signature, he can compare the hashes, and now he's able to validate integrity as well there. Okay. Holy cow, we've gone through this a couple of times. I'm sure you guys are getting burnt out on it. Sandra, you got a question? Fire away from me.
Yeah, sorry guys. I understand this. It's making sense to me, but I know this happens like in a real life scenario, like when you explained it, if you're comparing the hash and you realize that it doesn't match, what happens in the back end? Because Bob is not like reviewing every email that comes through and checking the hash of it. So like what happens in the background in that case? Does it get like it gets blocked?
Well, first of all, love that question. We're studying so much right now, and it's easy to get convoluted on these technical concepts and what's going on. What do I need to do as a technician versus what just happens? And so I'm really glad that your question just brings us back to reality here for a moment. How does this work? Is Bob actually going through and decrypting the signature every time? I've never done that. And the answer is pretty much all this does take place in the back end, like you're saying. So with the key exchange, if there's an issue decrypting, then you'll get an error message about that, or it'll get sent to like a quarantine bin. So this starts to bring in some concepts from internet security, just in general, from a domain perspective almost. So this goes a little bit deeper than we're going to go here, but I'll give you a couple of terms.
Like mail exchange?
Yeah, mail exchange. Mail
Okay.
exchange could be a piece of that. Exactly. You'll hear these things brought up. And not so much SPF. DMARC is one of them. I'll put all three as kind of the SPF. These are more related to email security or domain security specifically across the wider web. So when we're looking at certificate authorities, the way certificate authorities manage the transportation of all this, is how they do it is with IKE, Internet Key Exchange. That's the protocol that's making all of this happen in the background. Another set of protocols that is happening are DMARC. Oh boy. Something message authentication. I don't quite remember. Domain keys, sender protection framework. Someone can look those acronyms up. They're outside of the scope of what we're going to chat about. But these are a set of protocols that tell the internet what to do when some tests like this fail. So if I send a message and it's not signed by the server that's responsible for managing my mail, then it'll get a fail flag. And I can configure how my domain reacts to that. If something fails, a security check, if it was sent but it wasn't from my server, do I care? Well, there's a lot of SaaS services that send email on our behalf nowadays. That's exactly what came about to prevent, was sending email from different servers, because we're now signing in a different spot. Again, you just asked such a great question, Sandra. So the server might be the one that's signing our message for us, saying it came from this server. I don't know that I want to go deeper in that, because I think I would rather prepare some content just for that, Sandra, because again, that's just such a fantastic question. The bottom line is there are a lot of other protocols in the background that help us make decisions about what to do when some aspect of this fails. A couple of those options are quarantining. So we could say, okay, if a message gets sent and it doesn't pass test 1, 2, 3, then I want you to quarantine it and let me know. We could have just straight up drop it, just get rid of it. I don't even want to know. A lot of big companies will do that. They don't want to take the time to go through all these different emails. If it fails, it fails. Get out of here. So there's protocols that will help us determine that. Yeah. Do you have any more specific questions that I may or may not answer right now, Sandra? That was a really good one.
No, I don't want to go deep in this rabbit hole here with everyone. So continue.
It's a rabbit hole. You guys have seen me get way too excited, and that's what leads us to going over time. So, Cliff, what are you laughing for, man?
Well, no. And before it gets too late, I posted a little link to an encouragement video for those that would like to watch it.
Is this
In the
your?
chat.
Is this the video you posted earlier of the after you passed the CISSP?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That was almost one of my icebreaker poll answers. So I'm glad you put that in the chat. Nice job. Okay. Great job with this. We're going to take a break. We'll do some practice questions. We'll come back to this. Now, actually, hold on. I'm looking at my clock. We only have like 10 minutes left, don't we? Oh, my goodness. This is what happens when I don't do practice questions first. I'm glad we did this. Okay. Let's switch back here. We're going to do the first 3 practice questions because they were submitted by you guys. So we're going to do the first 3 practice questions. We'll see what we have time for after that. And then we'll have some practice questions ready to go for us on PKI in our next session. So, all right, let's just reorient ourselves. The poll function, there's the activities box. So you can go ahead and open up your polls. I'll put the question up on the slide here very shortly. And then once you have your answer selected, you can go into the poll and submit your official answer. I'm going to do a timer of 45 seconds on this one. Some of the questions are a little lengthy, but we're also a little out of time. So just pretend it's kind of crunch time on the exam for you. So we'll do a 40-second timer.
You're on question 140. You almost got 3 hours up.
That's exactly right. You guys all did the thing in sports where you're playing basketball. Okay, 4th quarter, a couple seconds left, shoot it. Okay, then you play the exact same scenario. So that's what we're doing here. Good job, Cliff. All right. First question. Let me get this full screen for you. Okay, go ahead. First question is launched. Okay, give you guys a couple more seconds. Get your votes in. All right, we'll call it there. Let me, nice. Okay, we almost all got it. And you guys are on this right track. Sue's public key is what we're going to use to encrypt the message. So Richard is sending a message to Sue. Sue is the only person that he wants to be able to open that message and receive the contents. He wants to make sure the data that he's sending is confidential. So if he does that, the only person to open that's going to be Sue, and the only key she has is her private key. He has to encrypt with the opposite. So her public key is exactly right. Okay, why wouldn't he encrypt wouldn't Richard encrypt using his private key to send it over?
Because then anybody can open it using Richard's public key because everybody has it.
That's exactly right. Why would Richard not encrypt the message using Sue's private key?
Because I think he doesn't have the private key.
Yeah, there we go. Tried to trick you. Good job, Anwar. Yeah, he doesn't have it. Exactly right. So good job.
Nice try, Josh.
I'm trying to sneak you, but it doesn't work. Okay, get ready for the next question. And go ahead. A little bit of a longer one here. Cliff says he doesn't like this question. Yeah, he got a lot of shorter ones on the exam. Okay, I'm gonna give you guys a couple more seconds because I only got one vote in. Get it in there. Couple more people. Take a guess if you don't know. Okay, nicely done. Majority of you got that here. We're going to adopt a zero trust architecture. So just for the sake of time, I'm going to walk us through our keywords to help us distinguish this, but please pop up with questions if it does not make sense. It's really important to me. So for the keywords, we're tasked with designing network segmentation plan. Our goal is to minimize the impact of an insider threat or compromised endpoint. Insider threat and compromised endpoint are critical for us to know. And then we're looking for an effective strategy. Okay, VLANs to separate traffic. That is wonderful. It gives us a lot of network segmentation. That's exactly what we were tasked to do. But part of our goal is to minimize the impact of a compromised endpoint. Now, VLAN segmentation does absolutely do this. It does minimize the impact of even device level attacks because we have things like worms that spread over a network. So if we segment them, we can limit the blast radius, so to speak. So if something bad happens, it happens in a smaller scope. But we're missing a piece of this. So it's a good answer, not our best answer, which is what we're after. Okay, firewalls to segment the network into different trust zones. That's absolutely correct. This is also a great option. We got security policies. Who can tell me what maybe we're missing with option B? We're so close, but we're missing a couple of things. Why wouldn't a firewall be? Yeah, Cliff nailed it. Firewalls for outside threats. How would this help with an insider threat? Firewalls absolutely could from a technical perspective, but it is a little bit more challenging because firewalls is network, as Cliff called out, typically on a perimeter of something. There are perimeter defenses. Okay, I'll skip over zero real quick. Network access control, excellent. That's right on the right track of what we want, but not quite sufficient for insider threats and definitely not for a compromised endpoint. All of these are great answers. Zero trust. Man, you guys are going to hear so much about zero trust in your careers. This is just waiting for this to explode way more than it already has. Zero trust combines a lot of different principles, but some of the main ones that are important for us to be aware of given this question. Does it help with network segmentation? Not necessarily, but what zero trust can do, or the acronym you might hear is ZTNA, Zero Trust Network Architecture. It looks at the device, it looks at the operation, so what that device is trying to do or what it's trying to access, and it looks at the context of what that device is. So this is easier in an example. Okay, so we're the financial institution. I want to go log into the bank. I'm an employee, so I'm going to try and log into a bank portal. What would the bank care about? A couple of things we'll throw out. First of all, has my device been patched? Maybe it's just riddled with malware. I sure wouldn't want a device to connect to my portal, any device, if it's riddled with malware. So we can do device level checks to make sure that they're patched, they're up to date, they're carrying specific programs that we maybe require our employees to carry, like malware defenses, or we could even blacklist applications as well if we wanted to do so. We can do this from a contextual point of view of you can only access these resources from these specific devices or from within these specific networks at these specific times of day. Zero trust is really powerful as an architecture, and it encompasses a lot of different technologies, which is what makes this the best answer, because it's really the most flexible and can encapsulate a lot of these different answers. So zero trust is a whole topic in and of itself. Does anyone have any specific questions on this and why C is the correct answer for us?
Yeah, I just wanted to add zero trust as well seems to be the most granular one, and it asks for an endpoint.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. It is the most granular of all of these. Network access control, excellent. Yep, but not as granular as zero trust. We can be granular on multiple different areas: the device, the context, what's being accessed, how it's being accessed. So yeah, great call. Granularity is a great keyword that isn't actually listed in here, but it's absolutely true.
I think the key word here, like insider, it's meant to address insider threats.
Yeah.
So never trust, always verify is the
Beautiful. I can't believe I talked about zero trust. I didn't say that. Thank you for saving me. Never trust, always verify. That's our principle here. So I use this example when I was talking with clients for years of, imagine you had a contractor come into your job site, physical job site. Well, in traditional architecture, we might have a guard sitting in a physical gate. They might check IDs, make to check sure you're on a schedule for that day. They might just kick you in and let you go and do your thing. You maybe or maybe not would be provided an escort. In this context, zero trust is almost like having a personal security escort all the time, always checking what you're doing, how you're doing it. Are you who you say you are? Are you authorized to do these actions? Are you authorized to view this data? Is it the right time of day for you to be allowed to use this data? There's a lot that can go into that. So it's the equivalent of, rather than just one checkpoint that you go through, constant validation. Always verify what's going on. Really cool technology. I don't want to get us too distracted because we're out of time. There's an open source tool that helps with zero trust. I haven't gotten a chance to do a lab on it yet, but if anyone's messed around with open source zero trust technologies, reach out to me, because that's kind of one of the next things I want to mess around with. But okay, with that, we're at the end of our scheduled time. We're officially 1 minute over. Thank you for your patience and being with me. I really enjoyed just getting to go through those concepts with you. Sorry we didn't go through as many practice questions as we wanted to, but we'll pick up where we left off next week. I'm going to go through one more practice question. You're welcome to hang online and go through it with me, and then we'll kind of wrap up there. But if you need to hop off now, thank you for being here. Go ahead and jump off and enjoy the rest of your day. Okay, question 3 is launched. Go ahead. We have a slightly longer discussion after this potentially, so you can answer and you just bounce whenever you need to. Okay, a few more seconds. All right. Nicely done, nicely done. We got the majority in favor of 15 here, which is the correct answer. All right. So this calls out symmetric keys. We spend most of the time today talking about asymmetric. Every person has 2 keys in asymmetric. It's real simple. Not necessarily a person, but it could be like a server. We haven't really gotten into that aspect or that side of things, but servers can have a key pair as well. They're an entity that we communicate with. So with symmetric encryption, why do we have 15 keys going on? There's only 6 employees. Who can give kind of a brief explanation of why that is?
Everybody needs to have a secret key with every other person that they only use. So every pair of people talking need to have a separate key.
That's exactly right, Anwar. Perfect. So where we're going to wrap up looking at today is exactly what Anwar just called out. Let's migrate over here. We got our 6 users. So in symmetric encryption, let me grab a key pair Okay, so in symmetric encryption, like Anwar called out, we need a shared key for every relationship that we want to have, every conversation that we want to have. And here we identified 6 employees. Each employee needs to communicate privately with every other employee. So we've got this one. He wants to communicate with this user, and with this user, and with this user. Boy, hold on, let me make these lines a little easier to follow. So he wants a relationship with all of these users. Forgive the mess. I do this on the fly, and this is what happens. Okay, so in order for this single user to have symmetric conversations across all this, he's going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different shared keys. Each one of these nodes, excuse me, not each one of these nodes, each one of these lines represents bidirectional communication. So if this user, we'll call him user B, wants to talk with user A, they have their own shared key that they use. If user A wants to talk with user B, well, they have a different key for that. They have each one established. Okay, well, now user D wants to enter the conversation, but he doesn't want to talk to user A. He wants to talk to user B. Well, he's got to have his own key pair. This isn't asynchronous stuff. So then we need another key. And you can see how confusing this would get. What we're after is this network of interconnecting lines on here. And at the end, you get 15 of them. There's a formula for how you get the actual number. Let me put the formula in the chat so that you can have it as a reference. So you can take a look at the formula. And let's go through the math on there real quick. So we'll do it very, very simple. We don't do a lot of math in here, so we get to do a little bit here. So we have, I guess I can just paste it. Here's our formula. Okay, N is the number of employees. So we've got 6 employees here. So let's go ahead and just plug that in real quick. 6 employees. Now, every employee here needs to have a key relationship with every other employee except themselves. I don't need a key to have back and forth communications with myself. So instead, sorry, my screen just glitched out there. So that's what this -1 is. I'm subtracting myself from the user group, but I need relationships with all other 5 people that are in this circle. So we have the total number, and we're going to multiply it by the total number minus me as a user, and then we're going to divide it by 2. Why do we divide it by 2? Well, because for each one of these nodes, we don't need 2 keys. We just need the 1 key for the whole relationship here. So we have 5 relationships. Well, we don't need 10 keys. We just need the 5 on there. So that's the actual formula that you can use to get this. So we can just finish it out. 6 times 5 is 30, and we'll divide that by 2 to get us our correct answer, which was 15. So there we go. We'll go through a couple more practice questions next week that kind of built on these concepts here, but we'll wrap it up there for today. Who's got some questions or comments? Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, real quick. This is a good question. I had one from the OSG, very similar. If you can explain this real quick, because I'm still having problems.
Yeah.
If you modify that question and it asks, if one of the user's key was compromised, how many keys do you need? I'm still trying to wrap my head around.
Yeah. Really? Okay. So let's just think here, because I kind of know the test question you're talking about. So, all right, we've got 6 users.
Mm-hmm.
Make that bigger for us. 6 users. We're going to say we use symmetric. We'll come back to asymmetric. And we're going to lose 1 user, or we're going to add 1 user. And what happens to our keys? That's kind of what the question you're asking. Is that right, Paul?
Yeah, they're saying one user compromised their key. How many keys do you need to change?
Compromised. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so we have our users. Something happens. Yeah, and then we lose a key, we add a key, something happens. Let's use compromise as your example. Compromise. Okay, I'm going to delete the keys out of here just for the sake of space. And let's take user A as the example. So user A, if there's 6 of us, we looked at this part of the equation, we don't care about ourselves as a user, we're communicating with everyone outside of ourselves. So there's 6 users, but there's 5 other users that we care about in this context, because one of the keys got compromised. Let's say it's user A. User A's got a key compromised. In this scenario, symmetric cryptography, we need to actually recreate every single key that user, okay, I'm getting a little bit confused between symmetric and asymmetric. So let me just pause and start over here just to make sure I'm speaking clearly. Okay, let's take the case of a single key being compromised versus a user being compromised. If we lose this key, we put this back to green and this key to red. If this key gets compromised, we only have one relationship that got impacted here, because user D has a different key that they use to communicate to user B, and user D has a different key to communicate with user A. They have their own shared keys that are still safe, so to speak. I'll change this. So in symmetric cryptography, if one key is compromised, lost, then we only need to recreate that single key. We just need to reestablish whatever relationship that key was supporting, really. That's maybe is a better way to think of it. We need to look at what relationships that key supported, and then we just need to recreate that relationship. So in this context, if this goes away, we just need to recreate it. So we would do that, and we would generate a new shared key in that context. So let's take this a step further, because if this question gets asked a handful of different ways. Okay, so now instead of a key getting compromised, let's say this user's account got compromised. Their account got compromised. We don't know whether their keys got compromised or not, but we're going to assume that they did. We're going to, we're going to use the safe principle here and assume that their keys got compromised too. So in this case, we need to reestablish the keys from the relationships that got damaged. So how many relationships here would we need to reconfigure, re-give a fresh key to?
6.
Close. This is where that 6 minus 1 comes in, is I don't need a key for myself. I need a key with all of the others. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 relationships in this context. If I, as a user, am compromised, or another phrasing you might hear is you had a user leave your company, or you had a new user join your company. So if this user leaves the company, well, we lost 5 keys there. We can delete 5 keys. Let's say we have a new user join. How many keys do we need to create? Let's take this compromise away. If a new user comes and joins us, and we had 15 keys as a company here beforehand, how many new keys do we need to establish? You don't actually have to do any of this math down here, as long as you understand the others principle behind this. Anyone have an idea of how many keys we would need to create in order to reset this up the way we had it?
3 more?
Close. So on this scenario, if we have a new user coming, then we need to look at the relationships. What new relationships do we need? Well, we need relationships with everyone. All of these users have symmetric keys that they've established together. So if there's a new user that's coming, we just need to set them up with keys to every single person, except themselves. That's where that -1 comes in, except themselves. So if a new user comes in, we look at the total number of the new group, which now would be 7, and we're going to subtract ourselves, or we're going to subtract this new user from that because they don't need a key to communicate with themselves. So we exclude them from this. And so we would need 6 new keys generated with this. It needs a key to talk to him, needs a key to talk to him, needs a key to talk to her and her. So we would need 6 keys in that context there. Okay, let's take another.
Wait.
Yeah.
Is that right, Josh? Wouldn't they need, wouldn't each user need a key from themselves to the new user as well?
But wouldn't that be 21 keys in total? Because if it's 7, right, and you subtract 1 times 6, I'm just going with the formula.
You are correct.
What would be 42, and then divide by 2 would be like 21 keys.
So we have, let me shrink this down. So we have 6 original users, and we're going to add 1 new user. So our original configuration, just looking at these 6 users here,
was 15.
we had the 15 exactly. So 16 original, or 6 original users requires 15 total keys. Again, synchronous. So we're taking the total amount of users, we're going to multiply it by the total amount of users minus 1. You eliminate yourself from the group because you don't need a key to communicate with yourself. And then we'll divide it by 2 because we share a key pair between each other. So 15. Now, exactly like you called out, April, we're going to add 1 new user. So the 2 questions that you might see are, how many new keys? Or now, or like, what's the new total? So
Right.
these are different questions. So the number of new keys, if we had a new user, in this scenario would be 6. He needs to establish 6 new relationships here. But you're absolutely correct. The new total has changed. It's now 20, I think you said 21, which is perfect.
Yeah, it would be 21.
Yeah, exactly. Another way you can look at this, so you did the addition. So if we're adding 1 new user, how many new keys? Well, we're creating 6 new keys. I have 6 new people I want to interact with, so I need to establish keys for those relationships. The new total, we could either do 15 plus 6. So if you're on an exam, you could just do that real quickly, or you can run through the formula like April did here for us. So instead of what it's.
So the way I did it was I did the formula for the second round. So let's say we have 7 users.
Yeah.
So I did 7 minus 1 and I got 6. 6 times 6 is 36 divided by 2 is 18. What's the difference between 7 users? 18 minus 15. That's how I got 3. 3 additional keys for that extra user.
Let's see, you might have to walk me through that math. Let me just walk through this real quick here. Okay, so we have 7 minus 1, we got 6 minus, so we got our 35.
Oh, wait a second. No,
There
so
we
I
go.
times it by 6. So I was wrong with my math there. But yes.
Perfect. Yeah, okay. So 7 times 6, that gives us what, 42? Is that right?
That would still be, yeah.
And then it'd be, and then that would be 21. Divide by 2 is 21.
There we go.
Yeah, it's still good. Nope, I see it. I was wrong. I times 6 times 6. I did 6 times 6 instead of 6 times 7. Which,
Yeah,
and then subtracting 21 from 15.
That value for n has got to be the same number. I'll see what you did, but yeah, it's got to be the same number.
Yeah.
So back to what Paul's question was, Paul, are you, Josh, doing instead of doing 6, if all the keys are compromised, you do 7 because you're counting the original key. Is that it?
So repeat your question.
Initially, we had 6 keys. And then Paul's question was if everything was compromised, because I actually saw that question also too in the test question. If all the keys are compromised, then how many, if one person compromised, you got to get rid of all the keys.
Yeah.
What does that number look like? It's not 6 again, is it? It's 7.
Let me clean this up here and let's walk through that. Yeah, great question.
Am I making sense, Paul? Because I know that was your question.
Well, yeah, my question was close to that. I said if one of the users' keys was compromised from that group.
Right. Then all the keys have to be replaced.
all the keys in whatever relationship was compromised. So
Okay.
think of these lines here as
That one user, not the total amount of keys.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
It's, let's see, let's just put impact. Ooh, that's impacted key.
Okay.
Do it in red. So whatever key is impacted, if it sits here and this relationship, this node is impacted, and we need to delete it, then we need to reestablish that same relationship. So we would only need to replace that one key. Now, let's change the conversation for a moment. I know I'm going to take a sidetrack here for a minute, but you guys will see where I'm going here pretty quick. We've been looking at synchronous. Let's consider asynchronous. So first of all, you guys are all sticking with me. I know we're over time, so we're just gonna keep moving. I'm gonna bring up a practice question real quick because you guys are all on the right track of what the next practice question is. Pretty much is okay. This isn't quite to the level that Paul has, but this is leading us in the direction of how do we answer these same questions with asymmetric. It's a little easier with asymmetric, and it might help clarify things on the symmetric side. So when we are dealing with asymmetric, how many keys does every single person have in the company or in the organization?
Just 2, but so it'll be C for 2000.
That's exactly right. Yep. 2000, you nailed that perfectly and you explained it perfectly. Every person has 2 keys. So every single person in this chart has their key pair.
Okay.
Hold on. So they all have their key pairs. They're all named Alice, I guess. So in this, let's again think of the relationships that are used here. So the relationships are really adaptable with asymmetric cryptography. I don't have to worry about what key I need to track down to talk with what user. That I need to, if I'm going to talk to user B, I need to know how to access their set of keys. So I need to know how to get, I need to know like their certificate authority or whatever we do internally as an organization for how I get access to their public keys. But I can start a conversation with anyone at any point in time here, and we set up the keys dynamically as we go, essentially. So let's say we're user A. User A's keys get compromised. They lost the private key. Oh no, it got compromised. How many keys do we need to recreate?
Just that one.
Yeah, just that one. We have to recreate the public too, technically, but we only have to replace one key pair. That's it.
Oh.
So asynchronous, it's a lot easier. If one person leaves, you lost one key pair. If one person comes into the organization, you gained one key pair. If one set of keys is compromised, then you're only having to replace that same exact number of key pairs that were compromised. So it's a little easier to identify there because you're just looking at who or what entity are those keys linked to. When we're talking about synchronous encryption, we need to look more at the relationship that it has, because that key is established, especially in that practice question that we had here. It was a little bit more specific, but every employee needs to communicate with every other employee as well. So it becomes a lot more difficult at scale, especially. So scalability is another reason that asynchronous is helpful for us. Limits our key size. Let's just for funsies, there's 1,000 employees here. How many keys would we need if they wanted to do synchronous communication? So let's just walk through the math here. Just funsies. Just so we can get a sense of the scale.
1,000 employees?
1,000 employees. So if we're going to do 1,000 employees, in this situation, if we have 6 users and we're using asynchronous, so using key pairs, how many total keys are we managing in this group of 6 users? Cliff's already got the answer close for us here.
I trust you, Cliff.
4,900 and wait a minute. Not 4,000. Yeah, 4,995.
Almost 500,000. That is so many keys. It would get ridiculous to manage. So you can see another benefit of asynchronous communication. In this relationship, if we had 4, I'm just trusting Cliff's answer here. If this is the number of keys that we had, and we've got 1,000 users, if one person leaves the organization, how many keys do we have to get rid of? Or let's just say we add one new person. So we now have 1,001 people. Without looking at this, how many keys did we just have to add? One new person.
Is it 999?
Oh, you are so right on the right track.
Okay.
You looked at the -1 and you almost got it. It's actually 1,000 at this point. If we add the one new person, he needs to establish communications with all his other 1,000 coworkers, since our total is now 1,001. So we need 1,000 new keys that's set up. Every time a new person would come into the organization, we would have to do that. So this was another huge limitation of symmetric cryptography that asymmetric solved for us. Every person, 2 key pairs, very adaptable, very secure. If you lose a key pair, you just recreate it. Your only job is to really take care of that private key.
I see.
Yeah.
So yeah, because you're adding a person, so then the total users will be 1,001.
Exactly.
So if the question was if a user's password got compromised, then it would be 999.
Yeah. So if one, that's a great call. Really well done, Sandra. So if one person within the 1,000, our original 1,000, was compromised, and we had to recreate all of the keys that they were using. So we'd have to recreate all the relationships that this person had. And they have relationships with 1,000 -1, just not themselves. So yeah, you're exactly right. 999 other keys would need to get recreated if one person got compromised in this scenario using symmetric.
So Josh, I just wanted to point out the reason why I brought up that question. It's good knowing the formula, but the way the question is asked, if you don't apply the formula correctly, you might think you have the answer when you don't. You know, that -1 could throw you off, or that +1.
Very well.
So,
yeah, it absolutely could. And you guys, as you're going through these practice tests, you've probably seen variations on this question. It's a common one. If they want you to understand the scalability and inscalability of these as well. So again, when a new user comes in, if they leave, if a key is compromised, if a user is compromised, if an organization is compromised, just having an understanding of, okay, if it's symmetric, then I need to worry about all the relationships that were impacted by that compromise or by the user coming into the organization or leaving. If it's asymmetric, we can really localize our thinking here to just that single point of impact on there versus having to look at the whole relationship. Because every time we start a relationship, we're typically going to use that other person's public key. So we're not responsible for that. The certificate authority is, or our company is. Alex, yeah, great to have you here, man. Have a good evening, buddy. Okay. Boy, good job, guys. We went over time about half an hour. Thank you for sticking with me.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Questions, fire away into the school platform. Keep your practice questions coming. I love getting those. Cliff, you got a shout out or question?
You got 2 minutes after this?
Yeah, absolutely, buddy. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you all for being here. Enjoy the rest of your evening or morning, wherever you're at.
All right. Bye, guys.
See you later, Sandra. Yeah, Cliff, what's on your mind, buddy?
This is so awesome, man. I'm glad that I continue to keep coming back, man.
It's so great having you here, man. Putting stuff in the chat that's really helpful. Thank you.
And I hope that me sharing what I am isn't distracting or.
Gosh, no.
All right.
It can only add value, Cliff. You're someone who has been in the community. Most of the people on the call have seen you studying and working your tail off. You're still continuing to show up, and you're the person who has passed. Most recently, they care more about what you have to say than what I.
And it still keeps coming back.
And still keeps coming back. Yeah. So,
no,
it's such a big help, man. I love the things you're putting in the chat. You add so much to the conversation that I can't.
I've had a couple of people that I worked with or studied with or whatever you want to say, and they followed up with the Mike Chappell 2024 videos. I know I started to display those. Now, LinkedIn Learning is a fee-based. However, anybody that has a United States library card has access to that for free. Or if you're a LinkedIn Prime, you have access to that for free. So My concern is I would love to have like 2 groups or 2 times a week to where we go through the Mike Chappell stuff, because I feel his stuff is so dead on.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't want to sit here and infringe on copyright, trademark, or any of those other things. And since you're one of the principal people of CISSP here, I just want to present that and see, hey, what can we do to where I could maybe lead those 2 classes.
Yeah, boy, Cliff, I'm so glad you brought this up. Really, really grateful you brought this up. So you've had conversations with Vincent before at some point, I'm guessing.
Yes.
I kind of figured. I shouldn't even need to ask that. Yeah. So
he's still alive, right?
Yeah, man, he is busy. He's working on a lot of the back end stuff. So just to clue you in on a couple of things that he and I are actively talking about, we do want to launch our own in-house boot camp. Kind of a hybrid style where it's, everyone's working professionals. So kind of evenings, I would be the one leading it for the most part. We would hire some instructors to come in for some like specialty sessions every now and then. But we are kind of deciding what are we going to offer? What's going to be included in that? What do people really want to study and go through? And we want to include a study plan. And I have the same question. Can I reference Mike Chappell's videos? Because they're great. I love his stuff.
All right. And April is one that has come back and said, oh, Cliff, thank you for suggesting this. And I've had a few others. And it's like, finally in July, I said, I'm going to follow his 2024. And it's like, he is so direct, dead on, simplifies things. And again, being with a library card or something like that, it's free. Yeah. I've also taken Lugamed, which is a fee. And yeah, he's 60 hours worth of stuff with a fee, but he does get into certain areas that explain things that I never understood. But at the same time, trying to keep in the focus of what you guys are trying to do. And
look, can I spit an idea out at you? What if, what if we had almost like a study plan, so to speak, where people were assigned to go out to access these videos? We could kind of come up with a curriculum. We're not doing the curriculum in the show, so to speak, live, using copyrighted material or otherwise protected. We can say, hey, we're all using these amazing resources.
What do you think about domain 1 and what are your questions?
Yeah. Okay. We all went through this video. Let's have a study session on that video. Does that kind of
probably sounds a little bit more legitimate?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
at least until we can get a better sense of what we can and cannot use in what context. But no, I think that's an awesome idea, Cliff. Man, if you were up for helping out with something like that.
I've been trying to offer, and now since I've passed, I'm still unemployed. Hopefully not long, but
I would absolutely love that if you would be up for something like that.
Yes.
Cliff, what's your schedule like on Saturday? We have a team meeting usually on Saturday where we kind of go through what the changes are, what everyone's working on, looking at kind of our roadmap, so to speak. Would you be up for joining us on one of those Saturday meetings?
Gosh, I'm unemployed. I'm missing a leg. Guess what? I'm not running all over the place. So yeah, I'm available.
All right, cool. Well, I'll reach out to Vincent and ask him to add you to that. We're not like talking about you behind your back, but you've stood out so much, man. I'm not telling you any secret. Like, you studied your tail off and you passed. You are the success story that we want to see it come through every time. So,
and part of the canons are to give back.
Yeah,
for the profession, and
the profession.
That's what I want to do. I want to see other people to be able to show that video and say, I'm a double CI. I'm a CI double.
I love that you posted that, man. I watched that earlier this morning. I was cracking up. I couldn't show it to my wife because she would look at me real weird for a while. But no, and that's the truth of it. I mean, you learned so much. I mean, you've made the comment a couple of times. Boy, if I knew about the test, what I know now, I maybe would have taken it years earlier. And imagine what that might have done for your career. And you get to have that sort of perspective and influence to offer to people. So, no, man, I've loved working with you in the capacity we've had the opportunity to. And if we got to do that more, I would just be thrilled. I'd be peeing my pants with excitement. So
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate the confidence.
heck yeah, man. Absolutely. Well, I'm going to reach out to Vincent like 4 seconds after we get off a call and
Okay.
let him know Cliff is in. So,
I have been, but especially now since I passed, and yeah, people like April, it's like they come to me and they, oh, Cliff, can I do this? And it's not like, what do I need to know the answers for the brain dump to get me through the test so I pass? No,
Yeah.
they really want to understand
cool.
the concepts, the aspects, and today we were discussing RAID, and we were discussing incremental versus differential backups, and she was expressing to me, it's like, well, I understand this, and this, and then we got into RAIDs, and it's like she had the drives messed up, but still, I said, well, for this you need this, and then I found an image for her to view, because that's how I learn. I'm visual.
Yeah.
I think I expressed it. I've read less than 50 pages of all those books.
It's especially when our profession can be so abstract. It is so helpful to have a visual to learn. Oh man, I'm with you.
So,
Yeah.
but no, yeah, please reach out and let me know, and I'll be here Thursday morning.
That sounds good, man. I just love having you here. It just makes my day when I see you pop up. So,
Well, you know what? I'm not done learning. I'm still alive. I wake up.
well, I'm not telling anything that's going to shock you, but yeah, preparing for these sessions, I get to learn a lot and shore up my knowledge. I mean, PKI, I've learned more about PKI in the last 6 months than I did when I was studying for my exam.
I concur. No.
Yeah, I get to teach what I wish I would have learned before.
So, all right. Again, thank you for your class tonight. I'm glad I was able to attend, and we'll talk soon.
That sounds great, buddy. I love you, man. I hope you have a good evening. I'll talk to
You
you
too,
soon.
Josh. Bye.